Have you ever stopped to think about why a man decides to distance himself from a woman, even when it's clear that there is still love? Many people believe that distancing only happens when the feeling ends, but that's not true. A man can continue to love intensely and still feel the urge to distance himself. And this distancing has nothing to do with a lack of love, but rather with something deeper and harder to see. What I'm going to show you today is that there are only two main reasons that lead a man to pull away. Not 10, not 5, not several, just two. And if you understand what they are, you'll realize that most of the time, the problem isn't you, it's not him, and it's not the relationship itself. The problem lies in something we almost never notice right away. Think about it. You're in a relationship where there is affection, the passion continues, and intimacy has not been lost. Even so, you feel that he is becoming increasingly cold, distant, less present. He starts not responding to messages with the same enthusiasm, avoids more serious conversations, and little by little, seems to be living in another world. The first thing that crosses your mind is, he doesn't love me anymore. But in most cases, this is not true. This is where the most common mistake occurs. Believing that a lack of closeness means a lack of love. This thought generates insecurity, despair, and arguments that didn't need to happen. And the more you demand an explanation, the more he pulls away, creating an endless cycle. What almost no one has told you is that behind this behavior, there is an emotional logic that many women don't know how to interpret. Men don't pull away because they have stopped loving you. They pull away because there is an internal battle that forces them to distance themselves. This battle can take two different forms, but in the end it always boils down to one of these two main reasons. And when you understand this, your view of relationships changes forever. Many couples break up too soon simply because no one taught them to look beyond appearances. You may think that his silence is a sign of disinterest, when in fact it is a request for space, a confused attempt to deal with feelings that he himself cannot put into words. And there is an important detail. Men have been taught from an early age to hide their weaknesses. From childhood, they hear phrases like, "Suck it up," "Men don't complain," "Be strong," "Hang in there." This type of upbringing shapes the way they act in adulthood. In other words, when a man is in conflict, instead of opening his heart and talking about how he feels, he prefers to remain silent and withdraw. That's why it's so important to understand what's behind this behavior. If you can see beyond the surface, you can save not only the relationship but also both of your self-esteem. Withdrawal no longer seems like a threat and is understood as a warning, a sign that something needs to be adjusted before it's too late. In this video, you'll discover the only two reasons why a man really pulls away even though he still loves you. Let's explore together the most hidden sides of the male mind, debunk misconceptions, and reveal truths that can completely change the way you live your relationships. If you've ever felt the pain of seeing a man who said he loved you suddenly become cold, you need to stay until the end. The answer you never got may be here, and I guarantee, when you understand these two reasons, everything will fall into place, and you'll never look at withdrawal the same way again. Let me tell you a story that may seem close to your own. Imagine a woman named Anna. She has been in a relationship with Carlos for over 3 years. In the beginning, everything was lighthearted. Affectionate messages at any time, unexpected surprises, weekends always together. Anna felt special, loved, and secure. But suddenly, she begins to notice small changes. Carlos, who used to be present, now takes hours to respond to even a simple message. He doesn't disappear completely, but the intensity has dropped. In conversations, he seems distracted, as if his mind is elsewhere. When she asks what's going on, he responds curtly, "Everything's fine. I'm just tired. It's no big deal." Anna begins to feel anxious. Her heart races at the thought that he may be losing interest. And like anyone in her place, she begins to insist. She calls more often, sends messages demanding attention, tries to set up meetings to work things out. But the more she presses, the more distant he becomes, until the moment comes when Carlos asks for a break. It's painful because Anna feels that the love is still there. When they are together, she still sees affection in his gestures, still sees sincerity in his eyes. It's not as if he has stopped loving her, but rather as if he is fighting against something she cannot understand. And this situation doesn't only happen to Anna. How many times have you heard a friend, a sister, or even yourself say, "I don't understand, he said he loved me, but then suddenly he pulled away"? This is more common than it seems, and it almost never has to do with a lack of love. Now, imagine another scene. Rodrigo and Camila started dating a little over a year ago. The relationship was intense, full of chemistry and passion. Camila believed she had found someone ready to build something solid. But little by little, Rodrigo began to shut down. He still showed affection, still sought her out, but no longer talked about the future as he had before. When Camila tried to bring up plans, family, or marriage, he changed the subject, became restless, or made up excuses to end the conversation. Camila wondered, does he really love me? Is he just with me for convenience? But the truth is that Rodrigo did love her. What was happening was an internal block that had nothing to do with his feelings for her. These stories show a pattern that many women know well. Men almost never pull away because the love has ended. The love may still be alive, but there is a silent struggle going on inside his mind. And when that struggle begins, the natural reaction is to pull away. Perhaps you've been through this, noticing that he still holds your hand, but less firmly, that he still looks at you but without the same intensity, that he is still there physically but emotionally he seems distant. This hurts because the mind begins to create stories. He must have someone else. He's tired of me. He never really loved me. And that's when arguments, mistrust, and the feeling that everything is falling apart arise. But I want you to remember one thing. Distancing is never without reason. It always follows a logic. Men don't distance themselves by chance. They may not speak out loud, they may not even understand themselves, but there is an explanation. And that explanation always falls into one of two reasons that I will reveal throughout the video. For now, I want you to understand that this situation is not an isolated case, it is not a lack of love, and it is not always the end. In fact, it is a common phase in many relationships, but one that only survives when someone knows how to interpret it correctly. It is precisely this difficulty in interpreting the distance that destroys many couples. When women understand the distance as rejection, they react with despair. When men feel this pressure, they respond with even more distance. This cycle can turn a healthy relationship into a real emotional battlefield. So before explaining the two main reasons, I want you to realize how essential it is to learn to identify the signs. Distance is not a final sentence, but rather a symptom. It can be the beginning of the end if misunderstood, or it can be the beginning of a phase of growth if understood correctly. And here's the promise. When you know exactly what these two reasons are, you will stop reacting with insecurity and start acting with clarity. This is the first step in breaking the cycle of withdrawal and rebuilding a true connection. The time has come to reveal the first reason that makes a man withdraw, even when he loves deeply. And it is more common than you might think: emotional and mental overload. Many men don't know how to deal with the weight of responsibilities, demands, and their own insecurities. When this weight becomes too heavy, the reaction is almost always to pull away. Not because they have stopped loving, but because they feel they cannot be the version of themselves they would like to show at that moment. From an early age, society places the idea on men's shoulders that they need to be providers, strong and tireless. If he loses his job, faces financial problems, experiences stress at work, or begins to doubt himself, it directly affects how he sees himself in the relationship. For him, it's not just about money or success, it's about personal value. And when a man feels that he is not living up to what he believes to be his role, he withdraws. He thinks, how can I take care of her if I can't even take care of myself right now? This silent thought erodes confidence and creates distance. Take the example of Marcos, who is in love with Julia. They had plans to live together, travel, and build a life together. But Marcos lost his job and spent months unable to find another one. Julia said it wasn't a problem, that they would get through it together. But in his mind, every word sounded like pity. He felt less and less worthy of being by her side. Gradually, he began to make excuses not to go out, avoided meetings, and finally asked for a break. Julia cried and asked, "But I still love you, isn't that enough?" His answer was silent but clear. The problem was never love. It was that he didn't feel capable. That's the point. When a man believes he is failing in the role he carries within himself, he pulls away, not because he has stopped loving, but because he doesn't want his partner to see his weaknesses. He withdraws to protect his self-esteem and, in a way, even the relationship. Here we see an important difference between men and women. When faced with problems, many women seek support, want to talk and share the burden. Many men, on the other hand, have been taught the opposite. When they suffer, they remain silent. When they are afraid, they hide it. When they feel overwhelmed, they isolate themselves. This isolation is the first reason for the distance. If you have experienced this, you have probably noticed the signs. He avoids serious conversations, spends more time in silence, pretends that everything is fine when it clearly is not. This behavior does not show a lack of love, but rather a lack of emotional resources to deal with the pain. It's as if he's entered a cave. Inside, he tries to organize his thoughts, regain his pride, and solve his problems. But while he's in this process, those on the outside only feel absence and silence. And that silence is cruel because it leaves room for misinterpretation. His partner may think that he no longer loves her, that there is someone else, or that the love has cooled. But in most cases, none of this is true. He just doesn't want to expose his wounds. It's important to remember, withdrawal due to overload does not mean giving up. It means that he is trying to pull himself together, even if it hurts those around him. Understanding this is the first step to breaking the cycle. When a man withdraws due to emotional overload, it's not love that's missing. What is lacking is inner balance. He can't offer what he would like to, so he prefers to withdraw until he finds his strength again. If you have been through this or are going through it, take a deep breath and remember, his withdrawal may just be a reflection of the weight he is carrying. And if there is true love, that weight can be alleviated with patience, understanding, and dialogue at the right time. The first reason, as we have seen, is emotional and mental overload. But there is a second cause, just as strong, that also leads a man to withdraw, even when he loves: the fear of losing his own identity. When he feels that he is losing himself in the relationship, that he is losing his freedom, that his individuality is being swallowed up by routine or demands, he tends to retreat. And this distancing does not mean that he has stopped loving. On the contrary, it often means that he needs to rediscover himself in order to continue loving in a healthy way. From an early age, men learn to value autonomy, the feeling of having space, of maintaining hobbies, friendships, and even moments of solitude is part of the male identity. When, in a relationship, he realizes that this is beginning to disappear, whether due to demands or a suffocating routine, his mind sounds an alarm. This alarm appears as distancing. Take the example of Pedro and Laura. They met, fell in love quickly, and soon were living almost glued together all the time. In the beginning, this intensity seemed perfect, almost like a fairy tale. But over time, Pedro began to feel that he no longer had a life outside of the relationship. His friends complained about his absence, his hobbies were put aside, and even time alone seemed impossible. When Laura asked him about it, he replied, "Everything's fine. I like being with you." But inside, Pedro felt he was losing himself. His love for Laura was real, but the lack of space suffocated him, until suddenly he began to pull away. This is one of the greatest paradoxes. The tighter the relationship becomes, the more he feels the need to break free, not because he has stopped loving her, but because every human being, and especially men, needs to keep a part of themselves outside the relationship for love to remain alive. If you've ever experienced something similar, you may have seen the signs. He starts seeking more time alone, avoids activities as a couple that he used to love, spends hours on simple activities just to feel like he still controls part of his own life. To those around him, this sounds like coldness or neglect, but in fact, it's a cry to preserve who he is. The fear of losing freedom has nothing to do with rejecting your partner. It has to do with protecting an inner space that ensures he can continue to be himself. When he feels that this space is threatened, even without realizing it, he pulls away. And that's where the confusion arises. Many women interpret this distancing as disinterest or betrayal, when in fact it is just a way of trying to regain balance. It's like a bonfire. If you put too much wood on it at once, the fire goes out due to lack of air. Love works the same way. When the relationship becomes too tight, even if it is full of affection, the space to breathe disappears. In these moments, distancing becomes a way to create that air again. This type of distance often appears in long-term relationships, when routine begins to swallow both partners. But it can also arise in the beginning, when someone is afraid of losing themselves too quickly. It's a human reaction. We need love, but we also need identity. And when a man feels he is about to lose his body and mind respond with distance. There is something that many people don't understand. Giving space does not weaken love, it strengthens it. It is in the space that he feels longing, values what he has, and finds reason to continue investing in the relationship. The distance in this case is not the end, it is an adjustment. So if you notice this behavior, don't react with despair, demands, or surveillance. This only reinforces his feeling of suffocation. The secret is to show understanding and respect for his space. That way, he feels confident to come back whole, ready to love even more. In summary, the second reason for distancing is not a lack of love. It is the fear of losing one's identity within the relationship. He distances himself to catch his breath, find himself again, and ensure that love does not become a prison. Now you know the truth. When a man pulls away, it's almost never because he has stopped loving you. The two main causes go deeper. The first is emotional overload. He feels he can't live up to his own expectations and prefers to remain silent rather than expose his weaknesses. The second is the fear of losing who he is. When he realizes he is losing himself, he needs space to rediscover himself. Do you see how these two reasons say much more about him than about his partner? This is the key that many ignore. Many relationships end because women interpret his withdrawal as rejection, when in fact, he is struggling internally. And when this interpretation turns into demands, despair, and fights, the distance grows until it leads to a breakup. But when you understand that withdrawal is not a lack of love, but rather a silent request for space or balance, everything changes. You stop reacting with insecurity and start responding with clarity. You understand that the best thing is not to chase after him without measure, but to respect his time and at the same time, take care of yourself. Think about it. How many relationships ended early because no one knew how to read the silence? How many couples would still be together today if they had understood that distance is not the end, but a sign of adjustment? Love does not die because someone pulls away. It dies when no one knows what to do in the face of distance. Of course, giving space does not mean accepting neglect or disrespect. There is a line between understanding and self-effacement. The balance lies in noticing when the distance comes from an internal struggle and when it is genuine disinterest. The difference is that when there is love, some signs remain. He still shows affection, even if less. He still seeks you out, even if less. And he still shows in his eyes that you matter, even if he can't speak. The final reflection is this: the secret is not to avoid distance, but to know how to deal with it in the right way. If he distances himself because he is overwhelmed, he needs to feel that love supports him, not demands from him. If he distances himself for fear of losing his own identity, he needs to feel that he will have space and will not be suffocated. When this is understood, distance does not destroy, it strengthens. Perhaps you are experiencing this now or have already experienced it. If so, look at the situation with fresh eyes. Instead of thinking, "He doesn't love me anymore," ask, "What is going on inside him that I am not seeing?" This simple change in perspective can save the relationship and your peace of mind. In the end, a healthy relationship is not one in which no one walks away. It is one in which both learn to come back. It is one in which there is space for two whole individuals to walk side by side. When understood, pulling away ceases to be a threat and becomes a natural part of the journey. And that's what I want you to take away from this video. When a man pulls away, don't rush to conclude that it's over. Breathe, observe the signs, and remember the two reasons. If there is still love, there is also a way back.